You can overwork yourself so easily into this industry. Then you run out of gas and you run out of inspiration. Then you producing shit music and nothing's getting signed and you're mad at yourself and your family's mad at you. And so it's like
totally
just taking a step back sometimes and just being like, hey, like I am also Dillon the person, not just Dillon the artist.
Yeah.
So you got to remember to be a human being too.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Headliner Mindset Podcast. Today's guest is one of the hottest and fastest rising acts in the house music scene. He's been getting support from some of the biggest DJs in the industry, releasing on tastemaker labels like Nightbase, Confession, and Spinnin' Records, and playing shows all over the world. He's also one of the most real, genuine, and humble guys I know. This is Dillon Nathaniel.
Thank you so much, Nick. That was quite the intro.
So good to see you, dude. It's been a long time since we've seen each other, since we've talked, since we've spoke. And just to provide a little bit of context, you used to be one of my old music business students back when I taught at Icon Collective, and you were just a fucking young buck, a little boy just starting his journey.
Yep.
And now you're a fucking grown-ass man out there doing the damn thing.
No, I mean, obviously with the help of everyone at Icon and yourself, like literally helped take us to the next level. So I'm so happy to be sitting here with you.
Hell yeah, dude. It's really, really cool. I'm personally just excited to catch up on your story because what year was it? Let's start there. What year was it that you went to Icon? When were you there?
I think it was 2013 was our class, or 2012, or was it 13? We were the second class ever to go to Icon. So there was like Max and Proto Hype and Mac J and all them were first. And then it was like me and Sam. We were like the second class ever. And we were still in that Glendale building.
Yeah. So that was like 10 years ago. That was about 10 years ago.
Way to make me feel old.
Bro, we have some catching up to do because it wasn't that long ago. Maybe like within the last year, I feel like I just started seeing you pop up on my Instagram. And I'm like, oh shit, Dillon's out there fucking crushing it. Like every time I open my Instagram, I see you playing another show. You're in another city. You're in another country. You're just like out there doing the damn thing. And so I'm just personally really excited to hear about what's been going on for the last 10 years. Like, what have you created for yourself and how did you get there is what I want to really dig into with you today.
Sweet. Yeah, let's do it, man.
Yeah. So let's go back to when you finished Icon back in 2012, 2013, whenever that was. Tell me about what life looked like for you at that point.
Man, I'm not going to lie. Like, life was pretty scary after that moment. Because before I went to Icon, I also went to audio engineering school at Musicians Institute. So like doing that transition over to Icon was like kind of like betting on yourself. Like, hey, you know, I'm not going to be an engineer anymore and record other people's music. Like, this is it. You know, this is your shot to be an artist. And, you know, at the time you have your parents' support and everyone's support when you're going through college. But usually that expectation right when you graduate is like, where's the money? When are you going to start making money?
Yeah, now go do something with it. We want to see it. We want to see the results.
Right. Like, you know, traditional family. I grew up in a traditional, more Asian household setting. So it's kind of like they all wanted you to be doctors and lawyers in the first place. So it's like being a musician, that was like wild for my grandma, but she finally accepted it. And I was, you know, blessed with her blessing to do this. So it was like, I felt the pressure right after graduated from Icon to make shit happen. And unfortunately, it didn't happen that way.
Where's your family from?
My grandparents and my dad is from the Philippines.
Okay.
So I'm first generation American, I guess.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so how did they feel about you, like post Icon? Obviously, it's not the typical college journey of you spend 4 years and then you just go get a job, right? It doesn't, there's no real time frame about how long this takes and what it's supposed to look like and when you kind of start making money. So yeah, tell me more about like what that transition and that journey looked like for you.
Well, so right out of Icon, you pretty much, you know, you have your egos high, your spirits are high. You're like, I'm going to take over, the house music world, like sending out emails and demos everywhere. And like once all of the rejection like starts to sit in, like you're like, holy crap, I'm not going to make any money. I'm burning through all my savings. Like, what's the next move? Do I go get a job at the movie theater? Like, what do I do? Do I get back into engineering because it's still in music? So it was like very confusing. And I remember even filling out an application for the movie theater down the street at my house.
Wow.
Because it got to the point where I was running out of money. And it's like, my dad was like, you know what, son, like, you can only live here so long. Like,
yeah. Like about to go sling that popcorn.
Yeah. I was like, shit, I guess I got to go get a job at the movie theater. But then one of my other good buddies who is living with me at the time, who also produces music, was like, fuck that, man. If you get a job at the movie theater, I'm going to come sabotage you. Like that. Like, he's basically my big brother, but he was trying to teach me, get a job that allows you to work on music as well. So it's like, if you get a 9 to 5 or whatever, and you're working 40 hours a week, you're not going to have that same fire that you do right now. So he was working at like a low key weed warehouse, just trimming weed, like, 2 weeks on and then you get 2 weeks off. So then he kind of brought me in, and I started working at that weed warehouse, just trimming and doing what I can. 2 weeks on, and then I got 2 weeks off to work on music and send demos out and still grind it out. So
yeah, you got to arrange your lifestyle in a way that supports your dreams.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? Yeah. And what a cool fucking friend to have, man. Those are the kind of friends we need to have in our corner. The ones that are going to come bitch slap us around a little bit, be like, no, motherfucker, you're not giving up on your dreams and I'm not giving up on you. That's who I want in my corner. Hell yeah.
Yeah, it was a low point because it was like nobody wants to work at the movie theater, like especially after graduating college with your audio engineering degree and your icon certificate. And like, oh, what are you doing? Like, oh, I'm working at selling popcorn at the movie theater. That's not, it's not the most moral boosting job, you know?
And this is a really interesting conversation to have as well, because there's a couple of different paths to take. And again, I really want to emphasize that there is no one right way to do anything. Mm-hmm. And I think anyone who's listening really needs to understand that, because sometimes we can see like, oh, well, that's the way Dillon did it, so that's the way I need to do it. But it's like, I'll interview the next person and they did it differently, and the next person will have done it differently as well. But something to consider is your time. Where's your time going, right?
Yeah.
And especially if you're going to be doing 40 hours a week, but it's at the movie theater where you're not probably going to be making that much money, then it's not really serving you. Because I also do see some people, they're like, hey, I have a 9 to 5, but that 9 to 5 is making 6 figures. And I'm actually like using the 9 to 5. It's like a very good paying job. And now I have money to put into my project, and I can do some really cool shit, and I can invest it into marketing, and I can invest it into building my business. So not to say that that's like necessarily a bad thing to have the 9 to 5, but if you're going to do it, don't do it at the fucking movie theater. Go do it where you can really go make some real money.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. Like, I'm definitely not hating on any of the 9 to 5ers that are still hustling doing music, because it's like, it takes a whole nother person to go to a job for 8 hours and then come work on music for 8 hours. Like, I applaud those type of people, because it's like, you're putting in 16-hour days. You barely have any time to sleep. You probably have no social life. You know what I mean? It's a very difficult situation if you are in a relationship and you're working 16 hours and you don't have time for anybody other than what you're doing. So,
yeah. Were you in a relationship at this time? Did you have a partner?
I had a girlfriend at the time, but obviously it didn't work out just because of the amount of time that I dedicated towards making music and making money at the same time.
Yeah. Okay, so you're doing 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, working at the weed shop.
Mm-hmm.
You're sending out tracks. They're getting rejected. You're realizing, wait a minute, this is a little bit harder than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
What happened from there?
I think it was like the pressure was on, like I was feeling it. And that's kind of like how my sound came about, is because I was in the break room all of a sudden getting yelled at because I was on my laptop in this weed warehouse making crazy music and like off of like a Bluetooth speaker. So it was like super echoey and loud. And that's kind of like where like the initial warehouse bass, like that was like kind of the first branding moment of my career, where I was like, oh, this is kind of like the old school warehouses back in the day, but I was taking it into a context where it really meant I was just producing weed in the weed warehouse, that I was working in. It wasn't really like
No way.
the old school like club, the warehouse, like where house music originated in, It's
Yeah. Hey, bro, a warehouse is a warehouse.
So I was just kind of like joking with myself, like, oh yeah, it's just like Chicago warehouse music. But like, even though I've never been to Chicago, and I was really just in the break room trying to make tunes.
Yeah. Orange County warehouse.
Yeah. So, I mean, at that point, it was really just like, the term when you put under a lot of pressure, that's like where you kick it up a notch, like any great athlete that I've always looked up to or any legendary musician. It's like some of the toughest moments in your life, financially or whatever you're going through. That's kind of where you make the best music you've ever made in your life. And like, I always have to remind myself that, because even with more success, it's like, you don't want to lose that same fire that you had, like sitting there. You always want to remember those moments. So,
what was the actual pressure that you were feeling?
I think the pressure of not only making enough income and like, my grandparents helped me out with education. So I wanted my family to be impressed. I wanted to please my family, but more importantly, I didn't feel like I could really be my own man without, making this happen for myself. So it was like that transition from almost like becoming a boy to a man. I think it was like 3 or 4 years went by since I graduated Icon. I was still at the warehouse, still working, still grinding. And then finally, out of like the grace of God, AC Slater finally got his hands on my record and signed the first night bass release on a compilation.
Yeah. So that was you had a bit of a break. You had a moment where it started to pay off. How did you shift and level up? You were feeling pressure, something inside of you kind of unlocked, I guess, in a way, but like, what did you actually do? How did you actually change the way that you were showing up and approaching things when you were feeling that pressure?
I think it's just like, I just at the time was maturing and growing up and learning how to manage my time. So instead of going out with my friends and partying, and everybody's in college going to frat parties, doing all this fun shit, and I'm sitting here slaving away in a dark warehouse. And then when I'm back home, the tendency was to go out, like we're back home, we made our money, let's go out and let's go get girls, or let's go to the clubs, or like, let's go to Avalon because we could get in, it's like all these places. And I think it was the mental shift of like sacrificing that social life to really, really buckle down and like put in those 12-hour days in the studio. I was only doing 6-hour days in the studio. Like, how do we level up? How do we manage our time to when we're back home, all we do is produce music? And this was me and my roommate. That's all we did anymore. We didn't even talk to any of our friends, go out. We were looking like some crazy like vampires. Our skin was
hella pale,
white, just so white, malnourished, eating like bean and rice cheese burritos, just
fucking whitest dudes in Southern California.
Hands down. It was my family was like, is everything okay? Like, you're looking skinny, you're looking pale, but that was the shift though, for sure.
Yeah. A couple of things there. One, I mean, I love that like you had a roommate, you had somebody that was next to you, right?
Yep.
So somebody else that was also like-minded, had the same goals, had the same ambition, right? Because when all your friends just want to party, it can be it's hard to say no.
Yeah.
It's hard to say no. And I think that part about who you surround yourself with is so important. And especially as an artist, especially as a music producer, it's not like you're in a band and you have other people there that are holding you accountable to showing up. It can be very much just on you. And that can be very, very isolating.
Yeah.
Like, that's why Icon was so great. It was like, there's 100 other people around you doing the same thing. But then once you leave and it's just you in your fucking bedroom all the time, if you don't have at least one person in your circle, it's going to be tough, right?
Yeah.
And the other piece I think is so important as well, and I think about this a lot, especially as I'm like getting more serious about treating what I'm doing more as a business and not just as like a passion. I mean, even though I've been doing it full time for 4 years, sometimes it still feels like a hobby as opposed to a fucking business.
That's how it should feel though, because you're still so passionate about it. You know?
Yeah. No, it's like, this is my music, bro. This is me producing right now. I'm literally like in Ableton right now. It's just a fucking podcast. It looks a little different, but going out, right? Of course, you still want to have fun and you want to have a social life, but also financially. When you're going out and you're chasing girls and you're spending money at the bar, every time you drop $100, at the bar, that's $100 that you could be boosting your fucking ads. That's $100 that you could be putting into a photo shoot. Like, I mean, anybody out there that has a history of like partying and going out, like if we add up every fucking dollar that we've spent at the bar, you know what I mean?
For sure.
It's like thousands of dollars that you could have been investing in your business and then also getting a return on. And so I think it's so important for people to think about that, of like, if you're serious about your craft, if you're serious about your art, if you're serious about your business, then everything has an opportunity cost, and really start paying attention to every little thing I spend, my money on, that it could be potentially going into the business. So just, whoever out there, I know somebody needs to fucking hear this. Some listener out there needs to hear that right now. So
sometimes you got to sacrifice like that urge to, you fight all these temptations, especially when you're young in your 20s. Like the temptation to go out and chase girls and party, it's always going to be there. It's like really, really dedicating yourself to a passion or a craft and pushing it forward as a business. That's an entrepreneur's mindset. And it's like, it sucks that in high school, they don't teach you that right out of the gate,
No, they teach you how to obey the teacher and do what you're told and get good grades and train you to be an employee and work for somebody else rather than go work for yourself. Like, I want to go whatever school that is. That's the school I want to go to.
Seriously.
So, okay. So then AC Slater, you had a moment where you finally got some love. You got some recognition. Tell me about that.
So it all kind of started with this label Audiophile, which was already signing a lot of my records. It was a guy named Robert Pennington, which I still, if you're listening, Robert, I love you, man. Like, so we still talk to this day. He was my first manager ever, but like unofficial manager, because I obviously had no money to pay him. He was just helping me out, and he had the connection with Nightbase. So it was just through that connection of sending music out, getting it signed a small label. The label manager was like, "Hey, I really love your stuff. I want to help you out with your career and send your music out to even bigger labels." So he connected me with AC Slater. AC Slater really liked, it was a track called Boom Bap, and it was released on one of the early Nightbase compilations. And then shortly after that, they did a monthly at Sound. So they started booking me as the very first opener for all the monthlies at Sound. So I got to first record label signing, and then all of a sudden I started playing all the Nightbase shows in LA, and that was the first LA show that I ever played.
Yeah. So you got that cosign. You had somebody open the door, and that's so important and common, especially in the dance music scene. It's like somebody that's a little bit further along kind of gives you a shot, puts you on the show, puts you on the label. I haven't ever heard anybody talk about a label. Like, I love this story about the smaller label putting you on and helping you get introduced to a bigger label. I've never heard anybody share that before.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes it's kind of like, oh, we want you to ourselves, and like, we want to sign your next track and, stay with us. We're the ones that discovered you. That's usually more the mindset of a record label, as opposed to, hey, like, we want you to go sign with somebody else. That's really cool. I haven't really heard anybody share that the story like that before.
Shout out Audiophile XXL. They're a Dallas-based label that unfortunately is no longer around. But yeah, at the time, I definitely was very fortunate to have a man like Robert in my life and to be that mentor and help take me to the next level.
What do you think it was about you that inspired him to really help you?
I think it's because for everybody else on the label, I probably had like 10 more tracks than everybody else. Like every month, when I was sending demos, I was sending like 25 demos at a time.
Oh, wow.
And he was only getting like 2 or 3 from other artists. And I think he just saw the potential of like, wow, this kid is a machine. Like, I need to help him out.
Yeah. Because it's not even necessarily about those 25 tracks, but it's about the hunger and the relentlessness and the drive. And like you said, it's like who you are as a producer, being a machine.
Yeah.
That's the guy I want to invest in.
Yeah.
It's this one, right?
Yeah, if you still look back on all of my first releases, I think I released on audiophile XXL for like the first 20 songs of my career or something. Like it was a lot of like old stuff still on Spotify that's from that label.
Yeah. And so this is a cool transition because I was just looking at all of your releases just to kind of see more recently like who'd you been releasing with. And I probably went through 10 of your latest Spotify tracks. Every single one of them was with a different label. It seems like you're on 50 different labels. You're on like every label possible. Like tell me about the mindset around release strategy and how you're putting out tracks.
I think labels are kind of like a gateway into a fan base, right? So like the beneficial points nowadays to release with the same label over and over again weren't the same way as it was when like back in the day where it was like major labels like Capitol Records and they were going to sign 2 or 3 albums and give you like $500,000 advance and put all this marketing strategy into you. I think with these smaller independent labels in dance music, it's important to understand that each label has its own fan base, especially with a label like Nightbase, Confession. All these guys are really started from already one artist, so it's an artist label. So you're basically obtaining all the fans of that artist. Strategically, I like to release on as many labels as you can because one, nowadays you don't get locked into some crazy sort of 3-4 release deal with a label. They let you do whatever you want. 2, it's like after releasing on the label 2 or 3 times, you've gained the majority of the people that are already following that label. So it's like, I would rather kind of spread it out and get signed to a label maybe in a different country and start to expand your brand worldwide now. So a lot of the labels I've been releasing with are not just American labels, Club Sweat, Australian label, Sola, UK label, because I really want to take my brand not just centered in America. I want to take it worldwide and see where we can go.
Yeah, the culture around it definitely has changed. I remember when I was a manager and just, this was 12, 13, 14, back when Icon days, over 10 years ago, I remember that when we would release tracks, sometimes you would release the same track on 2 different labels where you would have it over with an Australian label and they would have rights to distributing it in that region. And then you would do it with a US label. Now we're a bit more connected globally. It's a little bit different, but that's a really smart thing to be thinking about and great headliner mindset of not just let me cater to this one market. And of course you do want to, you started in the States, you started in LA and very much grew from there, but to start thinking globally, how do I build a fan base in the Philippines? How do I build a fan base in India? How do I, that is very much also a major record label strategy as well. And just to be thinking more broadly like that is really cool to see that you're doing that.
Yeah, because even in different countries, the same way, even if it's a small label, it doesn't matter. You're still tapping in to that one connection that could lead you to the next big label in that country. So it's like, realistically, there's no label too big or too small. If the music is good, it's going to be heard by the right people,
Yeah. Now, when you are getting supported by AC Slater, he was throwing a monthly party, getting in with the Nightbase crew, right? So obviously getting that cosign really probably put you on the map, introduced you to a lot more people. What happened from there?
Well, it's kind of like the domino effect, right? Like one good thing happens, you build that steam and, you're going. One thing led to another, like another good thing that happened around that same time period was Mala was doing his first illegal mixtape compilation on Confession. I had sent him one of the demos that Nightbase actually rejected, sent it over to Mala, and I shortly got like a few weeks later videos that everyone kept sending me of this tune, and he opened up with this song every tour date on his first tour ever. It was called like the Illegal Tour, and then eventually it led to Chami hearing it, and then they signed it, and it was the first record on the compilation.
One man's trash is another man's treasure.
Yeah, 100%. Like, even though that track, I was very disappointed. Like, the label that was supporting me, putting me on shows, I thought it was one of my best songs. They rejected it. So it was like, I could have got down on myself, but I think it was more like when you get so familiar with rejection and failure and it doesn't faze you, you're like, it's an opportunity for somewhere else. Maybe that Chami picked it up is only because Aces Slater rejected it.
And I've heard so many stories about that as well, of huge hit records that are like global, massive hits. And you oftentimes, when you actually hear the story, a lot of them have an origin story of rejection, where it's like, the label didn't want it, or somebody said, this is garbage, it's never going to work. And then the artist is like, no, fuck it. I believe in this track and I'm going to put it out, and then it blows up. Like, there's a lot of those stories out there. So
hell yeah,
it's good to remove the ego. It's like, all right, maybe it's not for that person or for that label. Doesn't mean it's bad. And we have to be conscious about how emotionally attached we are to things.
I think it's a good thing if labels are rejecting your music, because it means that you don't fit into the status quo. You're not fitting in to this like confined box of what their sound is. And it's okay. If labels don't want to sign you for your sound, then heck with the label, you know? Like, if they want you to fit in the box of within their sound, all they're doing is replicating the artist whose label it is. And if you look at some of the best labels, they're the innovators, you know? They're the people that sign the next breaking record. They're not trying to repeat the same process. So it might be a good sign that labels are rejecting your tracks.
What is the right way to go about submitting your tracks? There's probably a lot of artists out there that are trying to get signed right now that are listening. And what would you recommend as best practices for an artist in sending out their tracks and increasing the likelihood of them getting signed?
I think it's just kind of like cutting your teeth on the scene a little bit, you know, getting involved. Like, sometimes people just cold send emails and like hope for the best, right? Like, I think it's really about being a part of your local community and kind of starting there, because it's all about connections. It's all about networking. So it's like early on, you know, at these night-based parties, I was out, not even just for my shows, but anytime they had a night-based party, I was around in the scene talking to everybody, you know, and then you get the right email address. Sometimes you're just sending it to the generic email address, and when no one's listening to it, and you're wondering why, until you get the right email address from that one person that you met on a random night going out, and you made that connection, and then you got that email, and then that led to the demo getting signed. So I would say, like, just keeping your network open and the opportunities open, because if you are a homebody type of person, then the opportunities are a little bit less for you, which, you know, I'm not saying anything because I was an introverted person, but like, you kind of have to force yourself out of that comfort zone that we're all so familiar with, and breaking out of that comfort zone to get into the right places for the right opportunities. So,
And what about for people that don't live in LA or New York or Miami, or like a place that has a real scene? What would you recommend for them? Do you think that it's like essential to move to where stuff is happening, or is it possible to really just do it online virtually without actually making those in-person connections?
I think it doesn't help. I mean, it does help to live in LA, obviously, where, you know, I live in Orange County. LA is 45 minutes away. That was an easy thing for me, and it made things easier. But like, nowadays, with your online presence, especially after COVID, everyone's doing live streams. TikTok became a thing. You could go viral on social media with one post, and it doesn't even have to be your own music. It's DJs are making mashups live and getting millions and millions of views, expanding their network. So the opportunity nowadays to expand your network online is like at a much greater point than it was when, you know, when we graduated Icon. So like you said, there's no right or wrong way to do it. I mean, it doesn't hurt to take a trip over to LA or one of the major cities, kind of go out. If you're really interested in a label signing, go to that label party, buy that plane ticket to New York, save the money, go hit up that label party, go make friends with people. You never know what could happen. You could create an opportunity for yourself that was never there.
Yeah, stop going out to the fucking bars every weekend and dropping that $100 and put it all into a flight.
Yes.
And have a life-changing weekend of shaking hands.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah, but you bring up a good point. It's like, kind of like, on the one hand, you can not have a ton of followers, but just be a really cool, awesome, genuine person and be out there and hustle and network and just meet somebody and then they really like you and they're like, yeah, dude, I'll give you the time of day. Like, I'll support you. I like who you are as a person. You've got a cool thing going on. And that definitely happens a lot, and that's great. And work that shit, right? And I think that's where it does also require having just a good personality and being humble and being cool and being grateful and knowing how to communicate, not being shy, right? Like having the courage to go out there and make those connections. And at the same time, if you have fucking numbers and you have a really sick brand, that's always undeniable.
Yeah.
Where, you know what I mean? It's like if you're cold DMing people and you have 400 followers and your brand sucks and your Instagram looks like shit and you're not really doing anything, you could have the best music in the world, but it's like people are just going to see that. But if you're like, hey, I built 10,000 followers on my own and I've got a really cool brand that like has a cool look to it and I've got an engaged audience, then artists are going to answer those emails and those DMs. Managers are going to look at it. Record labels are going to look at it. So yeah, again, no right or wrong way, but these are all the things to be looking at and focusing on for sure.
Yeah, 100%. You could have one viral video that blows up overnight. You gain 10,000 followers from just one video. And it's usually like the video that like you didn't put so much effort into it. It's funny, like you try so hard to make a viral video and it's the one video you didn't try at all to make viral and it's just genuine and it connects and it blows up.
Yeah. I love the stuff that you've been putting out recently. You've been pulling these old videos from the archives of like, yo, here I was 10 years ago, 8 years ago, like by myself, you're playing in front of like 6 people. I love seeing that. I really love seeing these old videos, man. It's been very, very inspiring. What's your approach to social media, right? I think because I talk about branding a lot and it's kind of easy. I don't want to say it's easy, but like, you know, you have a lot of brands where it's a little bit more manufactured and it's like a little bit less about the person.
Right.
And that's really fun. You know, you can go do a lot of fun things with that. You know, your brand is Dillon Nathaniel. It's you. It's, you know, it's you, the DJ. But how would you describe like what your brand is all about, and also just like what you're doing on social media and how you're putting yourself out there?
Yeah.
Besides just, you know, putting out cool music and stuff, but what else does that look like for you?
Yeah. I mean, the branding is such an essential part to like connect with your fans, and you could have the coolest music in the world, but if you don't have a brand, then people can't relate to your music. But like, I was just really noticing and sitting down, I tried to be like everybody else at first, especially at Icon. You know, you want to be the cool DJ that wears sunglasses while they DJ, and they're just like the coolest. You're the shit. I'm wearing Balenciaga and all this like designer stuff, and I'm on jet planes, and everything you post is like luxurious. And that was very much the DJ scene while like I was getting into it. We had like the Eric Morillos, you know, when Swedish House Mafia and like all that kind of stuff. So I always thought that you had to be that way in order to be successful. But it was the disconnect between my brand and myself trying to be something that I'm not. I'm not the cool guy. I don't want to be the cool guy, you know? Like, I want to be the genuine guy because that's who I am. I'm not the Fisher funny guy that does comedy bits and just makes people laugh all the time. I'm not like the super cool, luxurious DJ Snake on private jet planes. It's kind of like finding who you are as a person and going through that whole process. You know, I realized I'm the kind of person that really loves to inspire. You know, I'm the kind of person that has always inspired all my friends and motivated my friends and my classmates and my team. I want to be motivational in a way that's like not off-putting where you're slamming motivational quotes down people all the time. Like, I wanted to be more genuine in a sense of like, I'm going to be authentic. Like, here's exactly how I did it. I'm not hiding any secrets. You know, I want people to connect with me in that sort of way.
And that's so insightful, because I think if you are creating a personal brand, if it's your name and you are really the face of it, it's got to just be you and it's got to be authentic, right? It can't be like, oh, let me try to be like everybody else, because the energy is always going to be off. And it's always going to be hard to make content because you're always going to be like trying. And there's always going to be this sense of almost like desperation behind it, right? I just made a post yesterday about one of my favorite bands called Sleep Token. The music is incredible. They're like, it's really, really interesting heavy metal music, but like with all these different influences. And I was already listening to them for a while. I just am such a fan of the music. But then I saw the brand, and it's this like masked, anonymous brand. It's all this crazy like cult worshiping shit that they do like at their shows. It's fucking gnarly.
Yeah.
It's so the opposite of like the man. So you can create something that is like a fantasy world, right?
Yeah.
And that's a whole different approach. But if you're going to take the approach of, you know, what we call it, playing the brand or playing the man. If you're playing the brand, it's just like it's separate from you. But if you're playing the man, then it is you. And so if it's going to be you, it really should be authentic. And so it's really cool to hear that that was kind of the missing piece for you. You tried to do it the other way of being inauthentic, and you're like, wait a minute, like it doesn't fucking work.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I'm not saying anything against people that do create images for themselves as separate entities in a whole stories, because it's like, you know, you could tell an entire story that's like above yourself that inspires people in really cool ways too. Like Daft Punk, for instance, you know what I mean? Like that's the coolest shit ever. Yeah.
I just interviewed my really good friend RJ, Bear Grylls. Everybody go check out the episode on Bear Grylls.
Hell yeah.
Incredible. We got into some really great conversation of touring strategy. So that's a great episode to check out. You know, the dubstep world is so different from the house world. And he even brought that up. He's like, in the dubstep world, it's like nobody uses their real name. All of it is about the branding. Like, oh, even him, he wears a fucking bear on his head, you know, but it works. It works. It's cool. It works. And again, no path is right or wrong. Obviously, it's a lot more common in the house music world. It's a lot of people kind of being themselves, but also not being themselves, because a lot of them are almost putting on this image of maybe being the cool guy. And it's like, well, all right, if you're cool, own being fucking cool and just be cool.
Yeah.
If that's not you and that's not your vibe and that's not your energy, then like, don't try to force that or pretend that. You know, just be yourself. Be a fucking goober. If you're a goober, be a fucking goober. You know, if you're a nerd, be a fucking nerd. But just like own it and be authentic, because it's actually the energy of authenticity that people are going to resonate with.
Well, Deadmau5 is kind of the anomaly, right? He's a little bit of both. Like he is like this figure and character that he created, but then he took off the helmet and became Joel.
Yeah.
And everyone knows him as Joel, the nerd that plays video games. And like, I feel like that kind of connected him a lot more of his fans, because it's like you could choose a whole different scheme for your brand or a story or whatever, but who's to say like that's something you're going to want to do for the rest of your life, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. Like it's going to evolve. This is where you are now. And you know, this is where you are now. This isn't where you were 10 years ago. You're not the same fucking dude you were 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And you got to go through some iterations. I'm not the same person I was 10 years ago either, or even 5 years ago. A brand isn't necessarily something that's always locked in. It should be something that it's evolving.
Yeah.
And especially when it's a personal brand, because you're not going to be the same person. Like Daft Punk, you know, there's still always going to be Daft Punk. It's so far removed from this world, and that's rad. But I love the branding stuff. It's always fun conversation to get into.
Yeah.
If you could give yourself any advice, younger Dillon that was at Icon, what would you tell him from 10 years in the future?
I would say your ego is going to be your worst enemy in ways where you will throw opportunities away with your ego being too big, too arrogant. You think that you're somewhere where you're not. You think you should be somewhere. And I think just enjoy where you are and the process of everything, and just be humble along the way, because the nicer you are to every single person, even if a person is an asshole to you, you're still nice to them. Guess what? It doesn't matter. You can benefit from them in a way where like, hey, this team of people, like this guy was an asshole to you, and instead of being an asshole back, you killed him with kindness, and then, you know, that led to another connection or something. So I think I ruined a lot of opportunities for myself as an early age because I let the ego get the best of me, and I thought I was better and should be entitled to more stuff than I actually was. So that held me back a lot.
Yeah. That was one of the things I learned along the way as a manager as well, was I was so attached to needing to get along with people or people liking me. And the truth is, you're not going to get along with everybody.
Yeah.
And especially as a manager, can you still do business with people and create stuff together and maybe not necessarily be best friends?
Yeah.
But I was like, I don't like you. I'm not going to work with you. And I'm like, well, this motherfucker probably could have just really helped your artist.
Yeah.
But your, little ego is actually getting in the way. Maybe could I have been nicer? Could I have been more, it can be such an emotional roller coaster and such a triggering, challenging journey to be on, just navigating through the music industry. So if you can maintain that sense of humbleness and also for me, I was like, damn, I missed out on a lot of opportunities just because I wasn't willing to work with people that weren't like super cool and super nice to me.
Right. I mean, you kind of have to disattach yourself and your brand and your business from the personability of like, you could not like somebody, but they hold the keys to like the next chapter in your career, and you don't have to kiss their ass either. That's the thing. Like there's a lot of people that think that you need to kiss ass in order to get somewhere. It doesn't have to be like that. You can be confident and cool and collected and still be cordial with people and work with them, because when two businesses benefit each other, that's where success happens. It's like, if you can offer something to benefit them, they can offer something to benefit you. You don't have to like, them as a person at all.
Yeah, dude, it is a personal development workshop.
Yeah, for sure.
It is a training. It is a training program, just being out there.
Yeah.
So where are you at now in your career? What's going on? What are the, I guess, challenges and the waters that you're navigating now at this stage in your career? Because you're out there, you're touring, you're playing shows, you're releasing, you've got some recognition. So what does it look like at this level? And what are the things that you're working on and working through currently?
Well, I got married in June of 2021.
Hey, let's go, baby. Congrats. I didn't know that, man.
Thank you,
Congratulations.
man. Yeah.
Fuck yeah.
And I've got a beautiful dog and a beautiful home and a beautiful wife. And sometimes I still get caught in that like hustler's mentality where it's like career first above everything. Like throw yourself into your career. Now navigating through the waters of like balance, family life, and doing stuff for you and taking the right time off, because you can overwork yourself so easily into this industry. Then you run out of gas and you run out of inspiration. Then you producing shit music and nothing's getting signed, and you're mad at yourself and your family's mad at you. And
yeah, man.
You know what I mean? So it's like
totally
just taking a step back sometimes and just being like, hey, like I am also Dillon the person, not just Dillon the artist. Like,
yeah.
So you got to remember to be a human being too.
Dude, I'm so glad you said that, because it's a part of what I've been wanting to introduce more of into the podcast and into these conversations, because like a lot of it has been very much the sort of masculine energy, business building, like grind, hustle, be relentless, make your sacrifices. Like, and also like you did have a season of that though, right? When you were young, you're like, I don't have time and space for the relationship right now. And I don't have time and space to go out on the fucking weekends. And you kind of had that season.
Yeah.
But now it's cool to see in and out, kind of finding that balance more. And I'm trying to bring that a little bit more into my life as well. And even I think it's just good for me to remember as I'm working with my clients and coaching them. Like I always encourage everybody, you got to take at least one day off.
Yeah.
Right? It can't be 7 days a week. Like part of the process is rest. You are actually working when you're resting. It's part of the equation.
Yeah.
And so if you're not doing it, you're actually not working properly. It's got to be part of the process, because you have to replenish the energy, replenish the inspiration. You also just need to fucking rest and take some days off and sleep in and like watch some Netflix and do all that as well. What does that look like now for you, just personally? What are the fun things you're bringing into your life? What are the things that you do to stay nourished and alive and not just be working all the time?
One thing that's been literally like the most life-changing experience ever is the ability to start going through therapy. And I started seeing a therapist, and that changed my entire mindset, because I wasn't realizing that I was burning out until I started talking about it in therapy. And they're like, hey, you're burning yourself out. Like you need to take a step back and remind yourself. It's like, your family's got to come first too, and
yeah,
I think that was game changing for me, because I was always so opposed to therapy, because the way that we were brought up with, our parents' generation, they never went to therapy. They're like, we're fine. You don't need therapy. And, it's pretty much the mindset, like nothing's wrong with me. I'm like, there's something wrong with everybody.
Yeah, for sure. Especially in Asian culture too.
Yeah.
My last few girlfriends were Asian as well, and they're like, "No, we don't talk about our feelings." Like, no, you fucking just figure it out yourself.
Yeah. So like
Yeah.
kind of going against that, like we're all sensitive deep down inside. And, I think mental health is something that every person needs to take account for, no matter what stage in your career, whether you're at the top of the game and touring nonstop, or you're like me, or you're just starting out. It's like your mental health is so important. And I can't stress that enough, because I just ended a 23-date tour. And the whole focus on that tour was mental health. Like, how do we tour and be healthy? And how do we, not over drink and like overdo it? It's like, how do we stop the burnouts from happening?
When you say the focus of that tour, you mean like the focus of you working with your therapist and what you were personally doing?
No. So we teamed up with the tour with Music Cares.
Oh, fuck yeah.
So it was
amazing.
sponsored, and the whole, the tour name was See the Light. So it was like very themed behind mental health, how to be healthy on tour. Basically, we're seeing bender culture is so normalized and popular, but actually I think that is like one of the most detrimental things that could happen to our industry right now, just because everyone wants to talk about all the fun drugs they're doing. Nobody wants to talk about how addicted to these drugs that people are, and to this lifestyle. And normalizing bender culture being cool, that became like a big issue for me that I wanted to touch about. Like, hey, like something's wrong here. I don't think that this should be popularized. Like, I want to take a different approach to it.
Yeah. Did you yourself get caught up in that as you were starting a tour and stuff?
Everybody does with the writers, and you get free bottles every weekend. And sometimes you're playing 2 to 3 to 4 shows and they're bringing you bottles. And it's like, I was drinking on the weekends at work, and then I was home, and then I would go to a friend's birthday and drink more. And like, so your normal personal life, I was drinking on tour. And like, it became this thing to where I realized I had a problem. Like, it became such a lifestyle that I really wasn't dealing with my emotions. I was burying them behind alcohol. And then I would like lash out and take it out on my family. Like, it would just blow up out of nowhere because I suppressed all my emotions, and I had so much anger inside of me. And then all of a sudden it could be like one simple thing, that I just blew up on. And I had to learn that in therapy of like, holy shit, this lifestyle that you're leading could kill you if you keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. And we see it all the time. I'm so happy to hear that this is part of your life, and it sounds like your mission and your message, because obviously, me, what I'm all about. Like, it's very, very fucking aligned. And, it's just an important conversation to have. And that's where it starts, is having the conversation. Right. And it's like, not to demonize having fun, because this is the sort of paradox where it's like, well, the DJ culture, or we shouldn't say DJ culture, it's the audience culture.
Yes.
The audience culture, the ones that are paying money to go out on a Friday night and get fucked up. Cool. Like, that's your once a week thing, or your once a month thing, or your once a quarter thing. You need to go blow off some steam. Cool. Hell yeah. It's part of the economics of why the industry exists. People are paying money to go and have fun, and they're buying drinks. It's literally like where the fucking money comes from. It's infused into the DNA of the economics of the scene and the culture in the industry. Now, as a DJ, you're not going out once a month. You're going out 25 days a fucking year. So it's like, you can't be doing the same shit that the audience is.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the piece of the culture, I think, that really gets to shift, especially as men, where there is this almost, stigma about being emotional or being in touch with our feelings and all this shit. It's like, it's changing. And I just maybe live more in a bubble where like I live in that space and I do that shit all the time.
Yeah.
I'm very much, obviously very passionate about changing the culture, aligning with other people that are also committed to changing the culture. And it really does just start with the conversations. I think it also just starts with creating spaces to be able to support other people and have those conversations. Like I run a men's group, which is so rad, where I'm like, I got 7 dudes that meet every week and we're like, yo, let's talk about some real shit. Let's not just talk about all the stuff on the surface, but like what's really going on, and normalizing having those kinds of conversations. And, you know, it's sad because a lot of people don't necessarily have that space.
Yeah.
But I think when they see other people like you know, artists that they look up to, both men and women that they look up to, and it's like, hey, we're all fucking human. Let's take the mask off and let's talk about the real shit. And yeah, I mean, it's important stuff, man. I'm happy to see you doing that.
Thank you, man. It also like backs into the music. Like I was feeling uninspired for a while, but that's because I feel like I didn't have purpose to really take it to that next level in your art form. You really start to think about the world beyond yourself and what you could do for the world. That really levels you up in every way possible with your art. And you start making, like, it just starts flying through you. Like you're not even the creator. It's like this higher message is being channeled through you. So yeah.
Amen, brother. Amen. What are you feeling is your purpose as you're opening up more to being the vessel of the art, you know?
I think a lot of what we were just talking about, like, number one, I want to inspire people, not just producers and DJs, but just people in general. And number two, you know, like, I don't really talk about this a whole lot, but, you know, my brother, like my older brother, full blood brother, is a heroin addict and he's homeless. So I think a lot of what I want to inspire into people and why I'm so like anti-bender culture and all this stuff is because there's a lot of people that struggle with addiction that don't even realize that they're stuck in it yet before it's too late. So it's like, it's all about lifestyle changes, moderation, balance, how to have fun, right? And still party. And I'm not saying drugs are bad, because I'll still take drugs occasionally, but it's like the mindset of like realizing when it's becoming a problem and how to take that step back. And I think, that energy that I've dealt with my brother, and that I continue that battle with him, I want to make the scene, the dance music scene, a safe space where people can use drugs recreationally, but do it the right way and in moderation and with balance, and not to normalize like not sleeping, staying up for 3 days, doing drugs. That's not normal. Like that's the part that kills me right now. So I think that's the main message that I want to inspire people is like, hey, we can be healthy. You don't always have to drink every time you're out to have fun. And that's something that I've been learning recently. It's like how to be sober and how to have fun. You know what I mean?
Yeah. 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 Another great episode that I did was with Freddie Lane, and anyone that's resonating with this conversation should definitely go back and check that out as well, because it's very much part of her brand. You guys met, I think, fairly recently. She played a show with you within the last couple months or so, right? Yeah. My homegirl, dude. That's my fucking sister right there.
Yep.
But it's a big part of her brand as well, too. She's like, hey, like, I like tequila, and I like to fucking party, and I like to have fun. And I go to therapy.
Yeah.
And I take care of myself. And I think that's such an important part of it, or at least something to consider for everybody, is why are you partying? Are you partying because like you hate your life and you're running away from it and it's an escape?
Yeah.
Or is it like, I'm going out because I'm celebrating. Like I'm going out, it's a celebration of life. I'm out here like I'm doing well and I'm happy and I want to celebrate life, It's just paying attention to where is it coming from.
Yeah. Yeah. I think like it's so easy to say that you're celebrating life and to go out and have a couple drinks, but then that couple drinks turns into 4 drinks, and then that 4 turns into 6, and then you're at the after party on your 12th drink and you're wondering why you can't stop. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The initial plan was to go celebrate. Then there's always something that's buried beneath. And that all really just stems from like not talking about it. You know what I mean? Like feeling suppressed, like not having that group of people or that support system where you can share your problems with and get it off your chest. Because if you're burying stuff deep down and you're tricking yourself into thinking you're going out to celebrate, but really like you're just trying to run away from a lot of issues you're not dealing with, just where I was in my life.
Yeah, dude, I'm one of those people that it's like, once I start, it's very hard to stop. I'm like, I'm a fucking, YOLO, like let's go all or nothing, kind of person. I've always been that way. And I just realized, like, for me, I'm like, it's just not worth it. Like I've done it in moderation. I did kind of eventually sort of learn, but it's like every now and then I'd still have a night where some shit would happen and I wake up the next day and be like, is this really worth it? Especially as you get older. I'm like, I'm turning 38. I'm like, do I need to be out here in these fucking streets? You know what I mean?
You're still looking 28 though.
Thank you, bro. Thank you, bro. I appreciate that, man. Yeah, dude, it's been a cool journey, man. It is so cool to reconnect with you and just to see what you've created for yourself, and more than anything, to see really what you stand for and the mission that you're on and the message that you have. And I really, really want to support you in vocalizing that and just getting that out more. And I really hope that people hear this conversation and get inspired to be a part of the conversation as well.
Yeah, for sure, man. Thank you for giving me the platform to speak about this. We're definitely both so passionate about very similar things. And I feel like that's why you and I connected 10 years ago at Icon too. And we've always had that super tight bond. And I feel like what you're doing is so awesome with this podcast, and you're giving artists the platform to share their message. And I think that's so dope.
Yeah, man. Well, thank you for being a part of it, dude. And I can't wait until we meet again.
Yeah, bro.
Get out of your own way and let yourself get deeper. Don't run away from the feeling. Listen to your inner speaker. We can't hide for long.